So I make these wooden bowls. I turn them on the lathe and I shape them with gouging tools. Usually I turn them a little bit, heft them so the wood doesn't split. Then I carve on them. Images, words, and patterns. And people collect these, pass them down to their kids, grandkids, and I sell them for quite a bit of money. You know what I like doing about this? Besides selling them for a lot of money. I like the wood I get to use for these bowls. It's wood that's no good to anybody else. Too cross-grained for lumber and too twisted to split for firewood. I take what's useless to anybody else and I turn it into a work of art. If I was a preacher, I suppose I could make a sermon out of that. Well, I'm not, and I won't. But this bowl right here, this one's special. I'm not near carving it yet. It's a commission. But a while back, I get this fellow who knocks on the door of my shop, and I was turning a big oak burl. Had my earplugs in, listening to my music, so I didn't hear him knock. He comes in anyways, taps on my shoulder, and scares the bejeebus out of me. I turned off the lathe and I said, "Pal, you know not to sneak on a guy who's got a sharp metal tool in his hand, right?" He laughs, says, "I hear I make bowls." "Look around you," I said. I show him my shop, where I turn them and where I sand them. The little room where I carve on them and do all the intricate little details. Take him inside my house and I show him a bunch of finished pieces. He was impressed, most by the carving. He says, "Do you take commissions?" I say, "All the time." "Would you do them for me?" I said, "For a price." "Money's no object," he says. Then he tells me he got this big old tree down in his yard with a large root ball exposed. Well, can I come take a look at it? I get to his house the next day, and I see the tree. The root ball, it's twisted, and it's real interesting. I show him exactly, the part that I'd want to use. He tells me he'll get his tree removal guy to cut it and deliver it to my shop. I'm liking this guy already. I don't even have to fire up my chainsaw. A couple mornings later, he comes, the root ball. That afternoon, the fellow shows up and scares me all over again. "You got a minute to talk?" he asks. I say, "Fella, I got nothing but time." I say, "You want some coffee?" So we sit on the stoop of my shop and sipping coffee and watching the birds over at my feeder. Neither one of us is in much of a hurry to talk. Well, I say, "Why don't you tell me about your bowl? What do you want on it?" "There are a few words from an old poem that I want on there, but other than that, I'm not sure," he says. Well, I say, "What are the lines?" "I don't want to tell you that yet." "Suit yourself." Then this fella, his name's Bob, by the way. He's a young guy, well, younger than me at least. Anyway, he starts to talk. And without any prompting, slow and casual and real humbly, he tells me a story about his life. Tells me he grew up in South Louisiana, made and lost a whole pile of money. By the time he was 30, he had acquired a drinking problem and divorced a wife. We sit and talk quietly for a minute. He tells me, real matter of fact, that when he was 32, he had a motorcycle accident that nearly killed him. Spent a lot of time in the hospital. In rehab, he was trying to get better, trying to figure things out. I can tell he's in no big hurry to get through his story, so I just sit there and, sip my coffee. And after a bit, he says, "I had a physical therapist in rehab who was a real Jesus person." That's what he called her, a Jesus person. He says, "She was tough, but she made me see things differently. Showed me what was real. And I wasn't sure of all the stuff that I'd been chasing up till then." Then he kind of chuckles. Neither one of us says anything for a minute. We just watch the finches at my feeder. And I say to him, "You're from Louisiana. May I put some gators on your bowl?" He says, "That'd be nice." So I ask, what were the words that you wanted on there? Just 2 lines, he says real quietly. Then he stares off again past the feeders, past the finches on the feeders, and like he's seeing something just far off. He says, can you make a lid for that bowl? I said, sure, no problem. It'll fit real snug. Now I was curious. What are you going to do with this bowl? He says, I'm going in it. He says, or at least what's left of me. He looks me straight in my eye and he says, with no hint of sadness, I've got brain cancer. My doc says I've got about a year to live. I think he's just being nice, but I'm trying to get all my ducks in a row. And this is one of my ducks. He smiles this shy smile and he says, some ducks might look good in that bowl. Can you do ducks? I say, with the best of them. We look at the finches and I'm thinking, here's a man I'd like to know. Finally, I say to him, I'll tell you what, Bob. Why don't you come by once in a while and we'll drink coffee and we'll talk about your bowl, and when you're ready, you can tell me about those words. I'd like that, he says. You've got nothing but time, he says. He laughs and I don't. Bob came in every week. We got to be friends. We talked about gators and ducks, Jesus and life. I finally got the lines in this card with a check. Only one life. It'll soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will last. If I was a preacher, I suppose I could make a sermon out of that. But I'm not, and I won't. I'll just put it in this here bowl with the ducks and the gators.